Okay, so let's kick this off. Guys, thank you so much for joining this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and listen to this session. We've got some fantastic content for you. I really hope that you're going to get a lot out of this. Firstly, I've got a couple of announcements to make. So unfortunately, one of our speakers, Bex from SES, had to pull out at the last minute due to unforeseen circumstances. We have adapted the presentation to cover the time that Bex was going to speak for. And we have got some really good stuff for you. So I think, certainly hope you will enjoy this massively. For those of you that aren't familiar with Livestorm, there is a Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So please do ask questions all throughout the session. It's good to ask the questions as you go. Usually with these sessions, we get a load of questions coming in at the last minute, and it means we just don't have time to actually review all of them. So if you just ask them as we go through, then we'll be able to review them and hopefully save some time to get through all of them at the very end. We will have a Q&A session at the very end. So with no further ado, let's just jump into this, and I'd like to introduce myself and my fellow speaker. So my name's Eddie Swindell. I'm one of three co-founders of Fresh Relevance. I'm responsible for for new business and also for our existing customer base. But I also make sure that our product is continually meeting the needs of our customers by really trying to bridge the gap between our advanced clients and our development team, and making sure the roadmap is absolutely on point. And I have got a massive pleasure to be joined by my esteemed colleague, Josh Beale. Josh is one of the probably the most skilled and knowledgeable people that I've come across in this industry. And I've had the pleasure of seeing some of his fantastic work on really quite a huge and diverse range of clients. So Josh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. Maybe you could just give us a couple of words.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. So yes, as Eddie mentioned, I'm Josh. I'm one of our principal account directors and look after global retail and CPG over at Mapp Digital. So what does that mean? That means I do look after some pretty large clients myself with our teams here over at Mapp. So I'm really embodied and engrossed in the strategy day to day for my clients, and we're going to show some really cool examples of that later on. And then as a partnership with Eddie, we've worked with Fresh Relevance over at Mapp for probably about 5-6 years now, if not longer. And through that, we've been able to really evolve some really quite cool digital strategies as well. So yeah, looking after the global clients directly, but also setting the strategy across all our account managers globally here at Mapp, using our partner network and the Mapp digital tools as well.
Thanks, Josh. That's awesome. So yeah, I said we've got a fantastic session for you today. In the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to run through some really key and important areas, important not just generally for optimizing the efficiency of what we're doing, but really important because of the situation that we currently find ourselves in. So we're going to talk about how things can be optimized specifically through team collaboration, and Josh is going to give us some really fantastic applied examples of some of the theory in action, showing you exactly what can be done, and also talking about how well it can work and what kind of impact this can have on the bottom line and various other metrics. Before I do that, actually, one of the bits of constructive feedback that I usually get from these sessions is, we're never normally salesy enough. And I always do like to make these sessions for you, really, and as educational and as useful as possible. But I do want to address that concern before I get that feedback again, and just say a little bit about Fresh Relevance, about who we are and what we do. Just a couple of slides. So we're a real-time personalization and optimization platform, and the way that the system works is we collect all of this data and content in real time as people interact with websites. We're looking at what they do, if it's an e-commerce website, what they browse, what people cart, what they abandon, what they buy, right down to really minute detail actually about the products that people are interacting with. So we build an understanding of products, we build an understanding of people, and then we have all of these AI machine learning, content and testing and optimization tools that sit on top of that core data to personalize the experience across different channels in different ways. The tools inside the Fresh Relevance platform fall into sort of fairly distinct categories. So we talk a lot about website personalization, email personalization, behavioral triggers or different types of triggered emails, but also things like social proof, advanced behavioral targeting, integrating all of your data and content with other systems, and also structuring the platform to cater for things like advanced multi-brand, multi-region sites that can include the ability to target any kind of marketing or automations using our advanced geo-targeting module. The platform has been designed from day one to interoperate beautifully with any other tools that you've got inside your marketing or technology ecosystem. And this includes things like social media tools, user-generated content tools, ratings and reviews, any kind of e-commerce platform or content management system, or any other email service provider, or the such like. And I say the such like because this category is fairly broad these days. We have off-the-shelf integrations with all of the leading providers, but we work particularly well with Mapp. They have got an incredibly unique proposition that's underpinned by some of the best sort of service and account management that I've really ever seen in the industry. And this slide articulates really how the platforms work together. So Fresh Relevance is providing a lot of insight on people and products, what they're browsing, what they're abandoning, details about the product. That goes into the Mapp customer data platform that sits alongside all of the Mapp native functionality that includes Mapp's own native machine learning and AI, their advanced segmentation and insights and analytics tools. And then we work collectively to actually deploy a personalized experience through these different channels, whether it's on websites, through social media channels, through media, mobile devices, or of course any behavioral or business as usual marketing emails. Mapp and Fresh Relevance have worked together for quite a long time now, and you will see some really good applied examples later on in the presentation. But here you can see just a selection of the brands. There's a lot more than this, but here are a selection of the brands, some of which we'll be touching on today. So why are we here? What are we going to talk about today? And we're talking about collaboration, but why specifically? And I think at the heart of this is that we are all operating in an incredibly challenging environment. And actually, this was the case even before the COVID situation. But the COVID situation has just made it even more challenging. Pre-COVID, still, more than half of searches were actually starting on Amazon, and there were even then lots of UK retailers in significant financial distress. The current challenges today include teams being smaller, team members have been furloughed, we need to do a lot more with less. The situation's changing rapidly. We're seeing, different local lockdowns rolling out now, and that's set to continue for the foreseeable future. And this, combined with all sorts of other factors, means that companies, in many cases, are under huge pressure to reduce costs. And of course, there's implications across the whole spectrum of different areas in which the business operates. Supply chains have been affected, stock may be held up, delivery services, people are addressing returns policies, and so on and so forth. However, inside of all of this, there have been some incredible opportunities. We have seen a huge increase in the amount of online shopping, or the proportion of online shopping that happens online. And inside of that, some particular segments have seen incredible growth. It's the first time since, blimey, the mid-90s, I've actually spoken to clients about catering for net new internet shoppers, people that aren't really used to buying online. My mum's a classic example there. And but inside of that, there's a lot more sort of shopper promiscuity. People are visiting websites for the first time. There's a lot of repeat business, but proportionally, in many cases, a lot higher proportion of net new business. And this is all inside of a market that's changing really rapidly. And when we look at the changing market conditions, there are a number of different dimensions that we can touch on really, really quickly. And they are the economy, the consumer, and the changes that are happening inside of organizations. Needless to say, the economy isn't in the best shape it's been in. This chart here is just looking at Q2 GDPR for this year. And you can see that most companies, with the exception of China, strangely, are significantly down. And this trend is set to continue into the early part of 21 at least. In terms of the consumers, the proportion of activity happening online has increased massively. I know Josh is going to look at this in a little bit more detail in his slides, but certainly what we've seen is a huge increase that is to a certain degree being sustained. And of course, as we move from summer into fall into the festive period, the talk of the town is that the festive period is going to start earlier, it's going to last longer, and it's going to be more online orientated. So this trend is certainly set to continue. Just talking briefly about the organization, we've got a few stats for you here. And this was from Marketing Week. It's a little bit out of date, but this was from April this year, still fairly relevant. And that is, according to this eConsultancy survey in April, 90% of companies either reviewed or delayed budget commitments. 90%, it's a huge majority. 85% paused new hires, and 81% suspended tech or infrastructure spend. It's almost like the world stood still for a little while, and of course this had a huge impact on marketing teams. If I was to boil down the impact into 3 key points, the first one is the teams are smaller, and this is due to furlough and unfortunately redundancies. But the fact is, in many cases, teams are smaller, and companies have to do more with less. And that's less in terms of technology resources and human resources. And of course, that's all underpinned with budgetary constraints. Budgets need to work harder. Now, just to see some positivity in this, actually, we do have an incredible opportunity. And ironically, sometimes it takes something as extreme as what we've been through and what we currently go through to actually really drive us to make changes that many businesses have been wanting to make for some time. It reminds me of an article that I read by Rory Sutherland, fantastic speaker, one of my favorite speakers, who talks about the opportunity inside of this crisis being that of change. One of the things that he said was that if you want to change a production line in a factory, you need to shut the factory down to make the change. Now, we haven't all shut down our production lines, but certainly things have changed to the extent that actually gives us the opportunity to make certain changes more easily. And the specific change that I'm touching on here, which is backed up by pretty much all of the major analysts, and we're seeing this actually in our customers and joint customers with Mapp that are doing particularly well. There is a huge opportunity to drive efficiency through collaboration of teams using resources that already exist inside of organizations. So if we just have a look at the different roles that we're talking about here, there could be more than this. Obviously, these are 5 sort of really sort of well-trodden or well-defined roles. And if we just look to start with at some of the conflict that often exists between these different departments. For example, if we look at marketing and e-commerce as an example, e-commerce tend to be the bastions of the website, heavily focused on general conversion, and more often have more emphasis placed on customer experience. And so there are various tactics, including things like data capture or the use of overlays that have got fantastic marketing benefit that might actually cause some conflict with the e-commerce team or the head of e-commerce. If we look at the relationship between marketing and merchandising, firstly, marketing tend to have an awful lot of data on people. And one of the things that I've noticed is that merchandising would hugely benefit from information on people and product trends. It would be incredibly useful for merchandising to know what products are bought with what other products. And that data all too often sits inside of CRM or in the marketing team, and merchandising never actually gets sight of that level of detail. Conversely, if we look at types of personalization or product recommendations on a website, these are typically driven by AI or machine learning that feeds from the understanding of individuals and also an understanding of products. And on websites, we tend to see various sort of fairly standard product attributes, including things like size, color, price, pack size, so on and so forth. However, the merchandising teams invariably have access to much more granular data, including things like if it's apparel, the length of a hem, the shape of a collar, the length of a sleeve, and things that are really important to buying, but may have little perceived value in terms of sort of personalization or marketing. However, if that level of data, if that level of product data is put out into the wider technology ecosystem, then the benefits can be huge in terms of how all the other systems can work. So, there are all sorts of other examples about how, the conflict between these different teams. But in the interest of time, I wanted to move on and just touch on some other areas. So firstly, when we're looking about how these teams can collaborate, there's a couple of different ways that I thought would be useful to review. Firstly, looking at specific tactics. So what tactics are deployed on websites and what interest do these different people have in those various tactics? Secondly, we're going to use a model that looks at a similar thing, but in a slightly different way, that will hopefully be really interesting food for thought. So just touching on some of the tactics for a second, I am going to look at three tactics. The first one being product recommendations. So product recommendations will often sit inside of the e-commerce department. They do use various bits of machine learning, AI. It's very common to see we thought you might be interested in, or recommendations that are relevant to a particular product that someone's looking. But the question here with marketing, or specifically acquisition marketing, how can these product recommendations work to achieve these kinds of goals? There are various different types of recs that can be used using trending products, new products, hot products. Personalization can be used even when someone first lands on a page based on the referring source. One of the main things that will come throughout this session is actually how we're reporting on the success of these types of tactics with product recommendations, as with various other types of content. It's really important to know how well they're working for not just in terms of overall conversions, but for specific segments that marketing or CRM are interested in. Heads of e-commerce may not even be aware in some cases of marketing segments or the goals that are associated with growing or progressing people through these different segments. And so it's really important to look at conversions overall. We touched on that previously, and one of the things that is really key when we're looking at the conversions or the value of these conversions, to do it from a longer time frame, we really want to look at the long-term value. Merchandising should always have an interest in product recommendations. How can products be elevated unless merchandising can actually feed in? And of course, this needs to go beyond black box machine learning or AI, so that merchandising can actually be effective in contributing to this tactic. In terms of CRM, here we absolutely want to make sure there's a long-term value of the effectiveness of any kind of content, including product recommendations, and we should really look at the effectiveness based on the customer loyalty inside these different segments. Testing and optimization can be incredibly interesting. Generally speaking, this can sit inside of different departments. It's not uncommon to see this inside of a technical team inside of an organization that tend to be obsessed with with conversions. And in this case, I would just really encourage people to take a long-term view that encompasses metrics from these other key teams inside of the organization. So we might be getting a conversion, but what's that conversion worth long time? Is it people converting in a high value segment that marketing and CRM can actually validate? So just moving on, a couple of other tactics. I wanted to talk briefly about data capture. By data capture, I mean things like overlays and pop-ups that are generally designed to get people to opt in or to volunteer other bits of specific information. Of course, with marketing, it's a key tactic. It's all about driving email database, the growth of the email database, and also the on-site identification rate. I mentioned this previously. There's often a conflict between marketing and the head of e-commerce when it comes to these kinds of tactics. In terms of collaboration, we can overcome these types of conflicts by targeting data capture to target very specific groups of people or individuals to achieve specific goals in a way that doesn't damage customer experience more broadly across the website. Merchandising often are never involved with data capture. However, it can be an incredibly useful tool to implement tactics such as progressive profiling, so that we, where there is a gap in knowledge, we can ask individuals to complete that gap. Somebody's bought a product. Why did they buy that product? Is it being gifted? Is it for is it for themselves? Really why? What is driving that level of interest? And for that, we really need to ask ourselves, what's our gap in understanding? Data capture and CRM, this really should be front of mind for CRM, because of course this is all about continually growing the customer database, but also enriching what we know about those customers with tactics such as progressive profiling. Data capture can be tested and optimized as well too, but with the risk of sounding slightly like a broken record, the metrics that are being used for testing and optimizing data capture tactics need to be reconsidered, and they need to go beyond standard CRO metrics of conversion or achieving a goal to really align with the goals of these other team members. In particular, when it comes to optimization and data capture, I find it incredibly useful for people to take a view on the long-term customer value, the value of the individual. We might optimize data capture form and it shows incredibly high conversion rates, but it's very, very low value customers. And if we just look at the conversion rates, it really hides the truth of the value. The last tactic that I wanted to talk about is what we call social proof, and there's a lot that comes under the banner of social proof. It's a range of tactics that are all to do with people being influenced on the actions of others, and it's more common to actually see what we call social proof widgets. So many people are looking at this product or have purchased this product, and this often sits inside of e-commerce. It can be seen as a very technical solution, part of the website infrastructure. However, these tactics are of huge interest to other people inside the organization, and if people can collaborate, there's a huge amount of value to be extracted. So with marketing, social proof can be targeted. For example, you may have a 4.8 Trustpilot score, and that information is going to be incredibly useful at developing trust in net new customers. And so in that case, this kind of creative should be featured highly and really, really prominently on the website. However, if the person browsing is a highly loyal customer, then using that real estate for that purpose is going to be an absolute waste. When we're talking about the social proof tools and tactics in the context of the head of e-commerce, actually collaborating with other team members allows the head of e-commerce to really leverage the investment that they have made in these products. There's plenty of value for these products outside of often what they were intended for in the first place, which is literally just to drive conversions in a very linear and predictable way on a website. Merchandising should be interested here as well too. The types of personalization tactics can be varied. They can be personalized not just towards different types of shoppers, but also different types of products. The social proof information can be labeled in different ways on products that need to be elevated. Talking about CRM, who often own the concept of the customer journey, should also be very interested in social proof. When we look at this from a personalization perspective, and I'll touch on this in a second, then social proof can actually have a negative impact in some situations. If you imagine for a second an incredibly high value product and someone at the very beginning of their consideration journey, actually showing them that the stock's low and 50 people are looking at it at this point is really going to make them think that that product's not even going to be available to them when they're actually ready to make a purchase. So when we overlay that type of tool with the understanding of the customer journey, all sorts of other opportunities come to light. And as with all of these other types of content, when we look at the different metrics that are pertinent to other people in the team, we really need to encourage testing and optimization to be cognizant of those and really drive for collaborative goals. There's one final cut that I wanted to take on this just in a couple of minutes, and I wanted to introduce you to this concept of the personalization strategy framework. Now, this was initially devised to answer a question that we normally get from new customers, which is, you guys do amazing stuff. I can see huge value in it, but where do I start? You know, what should I be doing first to achieve different goals? And so what this framework does is it takes two models that people know and love, the customer journey and an idea of personification or profiling or just an understanding of customers. In terms of a customer journey, if I just show you what this looks like on the y-axis, you can see key elements of a customer journey map, customer activities and goals, business goals, KPIs, but the bit in orange is the bit that we tend to focus on, the touch points throughout the customer journey. But what makes this more universal across other sectors when we talk about this in terms of a customer journey, it's not just the journey through the website, it's the journey through the decision-making process, from awareness through to loyalty and advocacy. And so what we would normally do is take these stages of the decision-making process and put them in a framework alongside of personification or profiling tactics. But in this case, we're not doing that. What we're actually doing is swapping out those personification and profiling tactics with different roles. So in this context, we can actually really start understanding how different roles should have an interest or an awareness of what tactics can be deployed throughout different stages of the customer journey as seen as a decision-making process. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of these things. I mentioned these things already. So, on the awareness stage, it's going to be really important. Data capture is really important. We need to balance that with head of ecom to make sure that we are not negatively affecting customer experience. To this end, on the awareness stage, we really need to make sure head of ecom is working with marketing to not just understand their key metrics of things like reducing bounce rates and increasing engagement, but let's understand the effect of these different tactics at this stage for the different segments that marketing are interested in. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these points, but you get the idea. It's incredibly useful just to map these different roles alongside the customer journey stage to identify exactly what opportunities exist to gain much improved efficiency through this type of collaboration. So with no further ado, I want to pass over to my esteemed colleague, Josh here, who's going to bring a load of this theory to life with some really cool applied examples. Talk a bit about what he's done and how well he's seen these things working. So Josh, over to you.
Thanks, Eddie. Just going to do a quick screen change. Hopefully you guys can all see that one. Just Eddie, can you just give me a yes if that's okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Let's kick in. So just further to Eddie's kind of setting the scene and landscaping before, just wanted to take us a little bit back just to the kind of the overarching retail trends for 2020. So what we have seen actually, and this is overall retail, so both online and offline, there has been this increase from August to July in overall retail sales, 0.8%. And we have actually had a 4% increase in retail sales from February 2020. So it's quite interesting to see there is some buoyancy within the economy still from an overarching full retail level. However, when we look at different types of areas, obviously we know with COVID, certain brands and certain industries have been affected more than others. As we can see here on the right-hand side, we have clothing stores, and their actual volume is 15.9% lower revenue typically than February 2020. But actually non-store retailing, so some of these can be some more of the essential goods, some more of the online only pure players, have actually contributed to nearly a 40% rise since Feb 2020 here as well. Again, household goods, increases in volume since February, more people staying at home. We are seeing that kind of increase in volume in this sector, which is obviously buoyant for some as well. But this is really what is interesting at this point now. This is probably the key one just to take away. Is the look at the online retail trends. So there's been a massive increase here, the 46.8% increase in online expenditure as a proportion of overall retail since February, so 46.8% of online retail sales. However, this has just tempered slightly from July to August. So there has been a temperance of this, down by 2.5% from July. And what does this look like in a real world? This is a retailer's revenue, a non-essential, a multi-channel retailer. So they have bricks and mortar store. And here we can see their revenues for online only during this period from April to August. And this really just follows all of those stats that we've just seen before. So you can see that rising up through to May into June time. The easing of lockdown has allowed people to come back into their stores. So there has been that temperance of online revenue as well. And this is a trend that we will see, and it will continue to fluctuate as we may go into lockdown 2, depending on stores, all of these types of things as well. So this landscaping of these overarching slides is seen actually here in this example of an actual retailer's revenue as well. So what did Mapp do to try and implement some strategy and tactics to jump on this online growth that we have been seeing as well, and really focus on the customer? So what are we doing here over at Mapp? So we really obviously have to look at down to that kind of individual customer level, or down to certain customer demographics to tailor our e-com journey. So that's one of the first things that we would do as kind of strategy consultants and working with our brands. And I'll come on to the examples later. And as a result of this, we don't just create these kind of out the box, standard, single, one size fits all programs. We have to look deeper than that. And that does involve those teams that Eddie has been mentioning before. So CRM, looking at the head of e-commerce, looking at merchandising, and even moving into the kind of media and retargeting world as well. It's not just about your own channels where we can be really effective. We can use this data to really enrich third-party media and the display buy, for instance, or our Facebook retargeting. These are the same customers to us. So we have to really be understanding of the different roles we're playing and how important the data that we sit on as kind of marketeers is available and can be made available for other channels as well. And then just one of these examples here. So we're not just taking this one size fits all abandonment program. We're looking at different spend thresholds, product categories, and then we might take different approaches. So one of those approaches may be for certain brands users who are looking at certain higher AOV products, we will do kind of aspirational approaches to their recommendations that they may be receiving in email or on site. Or for instance, those who are looking at the lower or bestseller kind of items, which are in their kind of normal AOV range, we will just make sure that we're hitting those users with the best sellers within category or certain different types of trending criteria. So it really is about adapting your strategy depending on the users who are browsing. And this all comes down to really understanding truly your customers where they are at these stages. So I know everyone really likes to see different examples of different retailers and different brands and what they're doing. So yeah, this is one from Jysk actually. Jysk are a big multi-channel retailer, 2,000 stores across Europe, operating in about 29 different countries at this point. And this is actually a Dutch version that Mapp and Fresh work with on together. So just how one simple abandonment email, this example is on the right-hand side, this has 7 different categorized heroes. So depending on where you have exited from the website or have been looking at certain areas, all of these banners change out just so they're all on trend, for instance. We can also change out the different timings of the mailers in this instance. So typically we're trying to capture that post session very quickly. So 15, 20 minutes for the first one, but obviously have different triggered stage gates. I have brands who work on 2-, 3-fold abandonment programs, but then just really tailor them depending on the customer sector. And the kind of reliability that those users would come back and actually convert. So it's not always right to send a 2-stage program. It can be right to send a 3-stage program if it's done in the right way to the right type of user. Here we also have some 6x tailored product recs, which again would be filtered to the best category where they have been exited from. So again, it's got some really niche content in here as well. And we're also kind of leveraging all of those other facets as well. So this is something that the on-site training teams have spent a lot of time and money and effort getting their reviews and ratings on site. So why not leverage that in this case from an email perspective to try and help drive conversion? So there's lots of different things at play here, lots of different tactics that are all being combined in this one kind of simple example where you would think of an abandonment email as well. There's also some really nice things that we're doing with some kind of filtered content here. So these guys actually have like guarantees and information that they want to get out for certain product sets. So if you abandon on a mattress, we will inject additional content for mattress guarantees and things like this as well. So you can see how the different kind of bespoke nature of these brands, they have different requirements. And therefore, really understanding your business goals, you can make quite differentiated and tailored programs accordingly. So Eddie was chatting a little bit earlier around recommendation blocks. A recommendation blocks is obviously in commonplace and has been happening on the web and in email for quite a long time. So what we're trying to do here over at Mapp is really kind of test and learn with the conversion rate guys as well, to really understand what that can look like from the form of an emailer. This is an example from Ed & Woolen Mill, and this was actually sent this week, where they're actually layering up 2 different types of blocks in here, more women's wear you may also like. But this wouldn't typically look like a typical Rex block with your price, your product, your now and your was price. So it's really interesting that you can use just visual imagery to help drive that CTR, the click-through rate, and then come onto the website as well. So again, curated content doesn't have to look like misplaced or have a conflict with marketing. It can be done really seamlessly. I think this is quite a nice example of how you wouldn't traditionally think that is a product recommendation due to the quality of the image, the way it looks and works with everything there as well. Just moving on to some on-site carousels. We mentioned Entertainer as one of our joint clients here as well. So if you go onto the Entertainer or ELC, I really implore you to do that if you have young children at this time as well. So yeah, there's obviously lots of different tactics at play here, but these are the best sellers carousels, which from the outset looks quite straightforward. However, there's a lot of logic that goes behind these type of things that we're testing and learning upon at the moment. So we're not just sending generic bestsellers that are trending items on the website. They can be filtered to the user's most preferred purchasing category, for instance, so it's hyper relevant to that individual. We can also exclude recently viewed items for those individuals, so we're not wasting precious real estate as well. So these are the types of tactics that we're doing, which are kind of making it above that basic kind of example, but then absolutely drives superb conversion for our clients as well. And it's just, we're also bringing quite a lot of extra data in here. So you can see these rounders at the top. These are layered over the top of the product recs. There's quite a lot of customization that comes in here. But we can also do, as targeted follow-ups, we could actually say if users were clicking through on the 75% off items, we can actually just put into their email just purely 75% off items in the recommendations, for instance. Maybe that user is a sale buyer and always will be. Therefore, let's go on to those type of objectives as well. So again, the way that we can service the majority of the data, or surface, sorry, the majority of the data onto the website, whatever we can capture against those products to truly understand where users are, what type of user they will be, allows us to market accordingly when we're doing our different channel activity as well. Here's an example from Homebase. So if you go onto the Homebase website, if you guys are not already a member, which I would hope you would be, this should not show for you. So we're only showing for the non-opted in marketing users database, which again, it talks to that conflict that we had before. So we're willing, or the brands are willing to capture if we're not going to annoy our existing customers. For instance, that's a classic way that we would do this. So we've got multiple variants as well. So we're changing the content and creative dependent on the pages that they're on. So this is obviously a garden outdoor category, but we could have kitchens, bathrooms, different kind of indoor paints, for instance. So different creatives, which will help drive that conversion or that click-through as well. And this obviously can be based upon not just entrance, it could be based on exit intent, page views, time on site, or a combination of all of those as well. So we have to be very careful and again, test and learn to see what is the best benefit for this as well. And then we've got different targeted versions for different customers as well. Next up, just going to move on to some kind of urgency drivers. So classic kind of countdown timers that everyone's has seen previously, but why do marketers do these type of things? Well, it actually brings a lot of focus onto those particular offers. So the middle example here is a home-based example. The one on the right-hand side is one for entertainer. So the one in the middle here, so kitchen offers, as anyone in multi or showroom, can be quite complex. You can get 50% off like all your kind of cabinets and different things. There's a gift card going on at the moment for Homebase with the offer ends that was just done this week. So they're constantly tweaking the offer. And therefore, it's really important for the users that they really understand what the offer is and when that does run out, because actually it's quite a significant purchase. So users buying to these offer periods can get quite upset if they don't hit that period by one day or don't have their appointment in time. So it's quite important for us to really drive home when this will happen, when this will end, and obviously will increase the kind of conversion rates for things like appointment bookings and stuff like that as well. And yeah, it just highlights that ending time as well of all their access. So that urgency drivers there. One of the things that Eddie mentioned as well is around the kind of social proof activity. And here's one for entertainer at the moment. And these have only just gone live in the last couple of weeks. So it is really kind of new stuff that we're testing on some of the pages. So yeah, these are listed on the product details pages. It uses wisdom of the crowds theory to give social validity to purchase. So again, here you can see selling fast, 95 purchased in the last 48 hours. But the clever stuff around this is it cycles through from purchased to carted to browsed items. So if there isn't a threshold met that the business is happy to showcase, it will move down the chain. So show how many people have carted that, how many people have browsed that item, and obviously switch that off if it's a new product that's coming online. So there's a lot of kind of reasons to bring these types of things in on the right type of way, but obviously relatable to the customer. And again, it's not right for every single customer. So again, we have to personify this accordingly. Just looking into some inspirational content, again, some tools that are available within the Fresh Relevance platform and integrated into Mapp's kind of emails here for some of our clients. We've got the real-time Instagram content. This can be filtered to hashtag, and which a lot of clients don't do. So they would have their typical kind of overarching, these are our latest 3 items on Instagram, let's say. But actually, when you start speaking to kind of merchandising teams, they're normally trading to a certain period. So let's say for Jaeger, for instance, they'll be looking at AW20 moving into spring, summer 21, and they'll be looking at women's wear, menswear, for instance. So what we want to do here is actually look at filtered products and let's have tailored, curated Instagram content, which is relatable to the rest of the emailer or the marketing initiative that we're on at the moment. So it's not just that one size fits all, yes, tick a box, I've now got Instagram in my emailers. It's now actually trying to bring that down to the right type of level so it serves a marketing purpose, or it really works in a content perspective with our branding teams as well. And yes, it drives new engagement, it drives decent click-through, and it just doesn't have that overtly sales message, which again, for high-end brands is really important as well. One of the things in Mapp that's obviously key to this is about the ease of the campaign build. So from within our tools, we have our drag and drop UI, which can bring in these types of recs. We have things like from this example here, we've got social proof in email, which again drives that urgency. It doesn't just have to be a web tactic as well. And obviously we can report on all of the individual slot performances and campaign performance as well. So I really just want to spend the last couple of minutes just teeing up a few decent examples for you guys in terms of takeaways that I think you can get from this session. So we're going to just look at some of those as well. But just wanted to talk 1 minute on kind of Mapp and how we bring all this together. So we execute all of our campaigns and emails, SMS, mobile push through our Engage platform. So that's where all of our kind of customer data flows into. We bring all of the techniques from Fresh Relevance that we've been just discussing into power the type of information that we have on our customers. And then we can layer over the top all of those type of personalization rules into our campaigns, whether that be newsletters, or whether that be our automated journeys as well. And that's obviously very good to do so because it keeps everything really current as well. We have our Mapp Acquire tool, which is actually a way that we can pass real-time segments into our Engage tool, and then layer that with Fresh Relevance, which is quite a unique proposition in the market. And then we underpin all of that with our intelligence tool as well. So retail-specific dashboards, potentially, for retailers. We have finance examples in publishing as well. And again, this allows, it's this kind of quickest time from insight to action. We need to surface that data for our retailers, especially, so they understand what the key metrics are, what's happening on site, to be able to go and implement those tactics there as well. So 3 things that between Mapp and Fresh, we think this will be really useful for you guys to take away from here as well. Mapp have just launched this kind of digital marketing playbook. So 100 free tactics, and it's on this URL, improveyour.marketing. So 100 tactics to help you acquire, nurture, grow, and retain your customers. It's completely free. You can go and download these kind of 100 tactics. And there's also a kind of a section where you can build your own marketing strategy. So similar to Eddie's chart earlier, where you have your consideration periods from awareness through to loyalty, you can build that out and put your key tactics on about what you've currently got in place and what you need to build into your strategy. And that's then exportable to take to your peers or your management teams and say, look, this is what we want to roll out for the next 12 months as our kind of marketing plan. And we're using this with a lot of our big brands to really assist and have all of our ideas in one place and combine the feedback from all the different types of teams. So we get to kind of meet the conflicts head on that could have occurred further down the line, for instance. And Fresh, to that effect, have also just kind of launched their new normal downloadable report around the festive shopping period. So in the run up to Black Friday, 27th of November this year, and into Christmas, we feel that extension of that period. So definitely download this resource. It's got lots of tips, tricks, stats on everything that we should be doing in the run up to the festive period here as well. So that's on freshrelevance.com/new-normal-Christmas. And then one final thing, we've got about 10 minutes left of the webinar, so we're going to have a quick time for some Q&A. But we just would like also to get 1 minute of feedback on the content that was provided today. Hopefully it has been useful and there's been some ideas that you may have not seen before or ways of working that you think you can take forward. So this is on bit.ly /ecommerce_web survey. And Mapp will, of course, give you a kind of a special gift or a £10 gift voucher for a well-known coffee chain, I believe, if you are able to complete this as well. So yeah, something that you can take on for your mornings hereafter. And obviously we will take this forward and help us tailor our future content for you guys as well. So without further ado, that's a thank you from myself and Eddie. We're going to set up some Q&A, and hopefully there's been something that's coming on the chat. So we're going to hand over to Laura, who will probably pose these questions. And yeah, we will go from there. So I'll just stay on my screen.
Josh, thank you ever so much. That was fantastic, and we do have some interesting questions that have gone through. I'm going to wrap a few of these up into one, but just to kick this off, there was a question about ID rate, and someone's asked, you know, what do we mean by ID rate? And I mean, I can certainly answer that, but Josh, just throwing that actually to you, because I know we've spoken about this in the past. But you know, what in terms of collaboration, I think actually the ID rate's a really good example, because it's something that happens on a website that's got implications in all sorts of other areas of the business.
Yeah.
So do you want to just kind of touch on that for us?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's one of the single most important features around how you can conjoin and actually create a successful kind of programmatic style personalization activity. So the ID rate is knowing basically how many of your known how many known customers do you have when they come to the website. So that's what the ID rate is. So for marketeers, the more people you know who are coming to the website, the more people you can potentially market to. That could be with the service emails like abandonment, but it could be around personalization as well. We've had a lot of brands who've come to us and said that they've been able to ID maybe 3%, 5% of all of their abandoners on site in session. And actually that's absolutely fair. That's what's been happening in the industry. But what we've been able to do through some of the technology tools at Fresh and the way that we're combining our data sets in the background is actually raise that ID rate. So that client has moved actually from 3 to 5%. They're on 32%. So 1 in 3 of their customers that are coming to the website they now know, which is a huge advancement for us to be able to go and target and remarket accordingly and personalize all of their newsletter comms. And we actually have some high-end brands who are at the 62% rate. So over 1 in 2%, 1 in 2 of users coming onto their website ever, we know who they are and we can market to them. So it's one of those things to take a little look at as a marketer. How many people do you know who are coming to the website? And it comes from 2 different things. It's great that you've might have loads of new traffic, and that's a way that you are bringing lots of new people onto the website, and that's a great success. But we need to be able to turn that into marketable actions. And again, conversely, if you have a huge known rate, maybe we need to focus a little bit more on the acquisition side. So again, that's how we work with those type of things.
Josh, you said something that I thought was really interesting. You mentioned media, and I know Mapp is really quite unique in that you do have your own in-house data management platform and DMP, and of course that opens up the door talking about collaboration for even deeper, the types of collaboration. Obviously, a data management platform typically sits inside marketing, specifically for media, but have you got any examples about how that actually creates better efficiencies and allows people to collaborate in different ways on that dimension that we haven't even considered yet?
Yeah, sure. Like I say, it's one of those which has always been traditionally seen as a way to push data into third-party advertising. So whether that be into social, like Facebook, for instance, or Google audiences, Mapp are able to take that data, take the insights that Fresh are driving as well, and be able to target users accordingly. So if we know this is a set of abandoners, for instance, who we're going to target through our email program, let's not use our retargeting or remarketing budget from a PPC perspective or display perspective to target those same users, because typically we're paying quite high CPAs to try and bring those users back. So it's about advertising efficiency, what we're trying to do with the DMP, but also we do have a tie-up between our DMP and our Engage tool. So actually what we're able to do is enrich in-market user audiences. So let's just give an example. So if you have the DMP pixel applied, we can see how many people have been browsing, let's say, your category of dresses or anything that you sell on your website. We can feed that into real time into Mapp. We can create an autonomous program, which would say, let's say the dresses example, find me all the people who've been looking at dresses within the last 24 hours, pull in all of the dresses type content from Fresh Relevance and send out autonomous campaigns. And this seamless link between having the DMP data plus all of the user's e-commerce data, past history data, email link click data, all in one place does really allow us to kind of enrich those audience segments, which we know targeted always is smarter and it always converts well. But sometimes what people have the problem is they can't build up enough of that audience. So what we're doing with some of the technology tools is to really build up that up in real time, find those in-market users without having to do that kind of splash approach. And when you layer that across multiple categories, like a Homebase do, across garden, outdoor, all of these different personalized comms that come out on the back of it, we're personalizing the heroes, we're personalizing copy, we're personalizing subject lines, we're personalizing product recs, we're personalizing articles, content, videos. All of that is happening in the same mailer, for instance. So you can really see how we can get very tailored to the user, and then obviously as a result of that has strong conversions.
Josh, that's fantastic. Just looking at time, I think should we squeeze in one more question?
Yeah, fine with me.
We've got one here, and this is: how would we compare the value proposition of Fresh Relevance versus Mapp Intelligence, formerly WebTrack? Very tech-specific question.
Yeah, interesting. I'll probably take the start of that one, and Eddie, you can have a go as well. So what we see is that the Mapp Intelligence perspective is really showing kind of visual insight data. So this could be on return rate, lifetime value of customers, RFM modeling, when users are falling into certain categories as well. So we see that intelligence just gives that kind of visual cue for all the different stakeholders within the business. And then what we can do with that, again, that can drive a segment or a user base. So as soon as a user moves into the lapsing customer, which has like a lot of AI empowered stuff behind it, we can then push that segment into Mapp. And then actually, how do we execute against that? If it was an email or an SMS or a push, well, we would enrich it with the knowledge and the content that Fresh is powering as well. So that's how we see it. We do that blended tools, making best use of kind of the power or the insights that we have.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, I'd echo that certainly. What I might add is obviously Fresh Relevance is involved with data and real-time data, but also an awful lot with specific content types, real-time personalization, and tools to target and optimize the delivery of that content. So, for example, data aside, Fresh Relevance includes a range of real-time content tools that you'd normally see in a number of different systems. We talked about social proof. There are some companies that specialize just in social proof, many of which are actually incredibly expensive, doing these social proof widgets. So many people are looking at this now. In fact, what other companies tend to miss with this kind of functionality is the ability to selectively target different types of social proof for different types of shopper, as touched on previously. Yeah, so what really differentiates the value proposition is to do with the understanding of the data and the segmentation, with the orchestration of tactics based on that insight, and having a library of tactics available to you to deliver literally at your fingertips in one platform. Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Pleasure sharing a virtual stage with you. And thank you everyone for joining. I hope you found that really useful. And hopefully we can continue the conversation, one-on-one in the future. But thanks again for joining. Really appreciated you taking the time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.